What's up, audit fans? Dr. Amanda White here from Amanda Loves to Audit, and today here with me I have Dr. Nelson Ma from the UTS Business School. We're actually up here on the balcony at the UTS Business School. And I wanted to talk to Nelson today because he has some really interesting research about executives and compensation. So firstly, welcome to Amanda Loves to Audit.
Thanks
I think people have
me.
seen you before. I don't know. I can't remember whether I've had Nelson on the channel before.
Sure, you would have seen me around some video, just lurking in the background.
Lurking in the background of some video before.
Yeah.
But so executive compensation is always a really hot topic.
Yep.
What is executive compensation? Obviously, this is executives, they're CEOs, CFOs, etc.
Yep.
But do they get a paycheck like the rest of us?
So when it comes to executive compensation, companies will try to structure their pay packages in a way that incentivizes these executives to work harder, right? So presumably these executives, they impact firm outcomes like profitability.
So they make strategic choices.
So they make strategic allocations. So there's usually a salary component, so a fixed amount, just like you or I would get in a full-time job that they get every fortnight or so, right? Then there's a bonus amount, like a cash bonus amount. So if they reach a certain accounting target, for instance, they'll get a cash bonus of X amount. And then there are equity bonuses. So based on how the share price performs, they will get additional pay based on...
So it's sort of like a double hit, right? Because if you can affect firm performance, then you can affect the share price.
Yes.
Is that the, I guess, idea behind those sorts of
so with
targets?
Bonus-based pay, that's based on accounting targets, is usually based on current year or maybe 1 year ahead or 1 year later, like 2 years worth of accounting performance. Whereas when it comes to equity-based performance, it's over multiple years.
Okay.
So they'll have a target share price set, 4 or 5 years down the track.
So you can't just make a big announcement and change the share price and get a bonus.
Yeah, it's difficult for them to actually make an announcement and get a bonus based purely on how the market responds.
And so for students out there, I guess all of this comes back to agency theory. So agency theory is that the agents who are the managers are going to be different from the shareholders in terms of their objectives.
Yes.
Right, so shareholders want presumably long-term growth. The current election tells us shareholders want franking credits and dividend imputation. But then you've got a mismatch in that alignment between what managers want to do, which is their short term. Most CEOs don't have a 20-year career as a CEO. It's much shorter than that. And so to try and align managers' incentives with shareholders' incentives, we have these contracts to, I guess, bond them to the performance of the company.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
That's pretty much the most accurate explanation.
All right. And so that bonus can be shares. That
bonus can be shares. It can be a cash bonus for reaching
options.
It can be options. Yeah, there's any number of ways of making tying a manager's pay to what the shareholders want to achieve in terms of higher share prices and dividends, etc.
All right. And so tell me about your latest research. And it got picked up in the Sydney Morning Herald.
Yep.
And a few other places. So tell us about what you did and what you found.
Okay. So the basic idea is that we looked at whether or not a company that uses a compensation consultant pays their CEO more. So a compensation consultant is...
Sounds like someone who earns a lot of money, to be honest.
Yeah, well, wait till you hear this. So,
okay.
So basically a compensation consultant is an individual or a firm that is hired by a company to advise or recommend on the pay of the CEO or other executives or key management personnel. So basically
does that have to get approved by anybody, by the way? So do shareholders need to approve what the bonus or compensation plans of executives are?
So our setting, so in Australia, it's not a requirement, and it's not a requirement anywhere else in the world, really. So in our setting, when we look at Australian firms,
so the board approves.
The board has to approve the appointment, but no one else has to ratify any other decisions relating to what the compensation consultant recommends.
So as a shareholder, I couldn't look at this compensation plan and go, oh, no, you're giving them too much, or this performance hurdle is wrong, or something.
So there's no explicit way of judging the compensation package directly, but we do have other regulations such as the say on pay regulation, where shareholders can vote as to whether or not they want to approve the remuneration.
Oh, this is the strikes thing,
right? The 3 strikes, the 3 strikes rule. So if more than 25% of shareholders say no to the executive compensation plan, then they receive the firm receives their first strike. After 3 strikes, then the entire is a complete board spill, and everyone has to get re-elected from scratch.
And is that something that we have just here in Australia, or is that other jurisdictions?
In quite a number of other jurisdictions, including the UK, the US, they will have say on pay regulations.
All right. So tell me about what your research found from people who pay these consultants to advise the board about how much executives should be paid.
So basically, what we found is that a company that hired a compensation consultant, they tended to pay their CEOs more.
Regardless of firm performance.
So after controlling for all firm-specific, governance-specific factors, the results still held.
Wow.
So a number of controls.
So a consultant tells you to pay them more money.
Yeah, so if a consultant makes a recommendation as to what the CEO pay should be, the CEO tended to be paid more, on average.
So what does that mean then? If you're a shareholder, what does that mean for the companies you invest in, for these CEOs? Like, how many, I guess I should ask, demographically or statistically, how many companies are actually using compensation consultants?
Not a huge amount. So we're only talking about 30 or so % of the top 500 companies in Australia. So not a huge amount. And outside the top 500, there's very little uptake of compensation consultants.
So 30% of companies that, this is 30% of ASX listed companies?
The largest ASX listed companies.
All right. So 30%, how many companies is that, do you think? Hundreds?
Well, of the top 500, 30% of that would be 150.
150, okay. Yeah. So 150 companies. And I guess this means that if you hire a compensation consultant, you're paying your CEO more, assuming when you control for performance.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you could be, so essentially if you're company A, no CEO, so no compensation consultant, and company B with compensation consultant, they perform the same, but CEO of company B gets paid more.
Yes.
So as a shareholder, you're not really getting bang for your buck.
Yeah, so basically what we're seeing is, as you say, if you compare 2 equal firms in every possible way, the exact same CEO, if firm A doesn't use a consultant, firm B does, then firm B, their CEO gets paid more. And it's not explained by any factor we have within our model that we could find. So
it sort of sounds like are compensation consultants working in league with CEOs and with executives? That's the question. So I don't know, how can we find out who requests to use a compensation consultant?
Well, strictly speaking, the rules say that the appointment needs to be approved by the board of directors.
Okay.
So presumably the board of directors appoints a consultant.
All right.
But with a lot of these things, it's not really observable.
So we don't know whether, for example, someone on the board of directors knows the executive compensation consulting company and says, hey, we use them. Is there any commonality between the companies that hire a consultant and common board members, or?
No research has been done there yet, but it would be interesting. That's this new topic right there.
If you make a paper out of that.
Great, we can write a paper out of that. There's a paper ready to go there. But yeah, no, it's still pretty unclear.
Because boards
what effects are
highly concentrated, right?
Oh, definitely.
The same people tend to sit on most of them. Yeah. So then is this part of, and I hate to say the word gravy train, because often board positions are described as gravy trains, but they are an important role, and you are held accountable as a board member for your decisions, especially if you're trading the company while insolvent. So what does this research mean for shareholders, for boards, for executive compensation consultants?
So I guess we'll start with shareholders. From a shareholder perspective, the regulation that requires firms to disclose if they use a compensation consultant, it's a good thing because it's providing a relevant signal to these shareholders.
So we see this in the annual report.
It is there in the remuneration report of every single company. They have to disclose whether or not they use the compensation consultant, and how much they paid the compensation consultant, and what other services the compensation consultant provided. So that is relevant to shareholders because they can use this information. Because if they see one of their investments, right, one of their companies, is using a compensation consultant, based on our figures, on average, the CEO is being paid about 12% more.
Ooh,
which
in a multi-million-dollar salary, that's a lot of extra.
So,
that's a lot of extra dough.
At the median,
I'd take an extra 12%.
At the mean level, at the mean level, that's about a $220,000 pay increase, right? Which is basically over 2.5 times what a regular person gets in a year. The CEO is getting an extra bonus. So it's providing a relevant signal. So I think shareholders that are concerned about how much the CEO of their company is being paid, I think they ought to look a bit closer at these disclosures. And then with that, how much what we find is how much the consultant gets paid has also an effect on how much the CEO gets paid. So if
you pay the consultant more.
You pay the consultant more, the CEO tends to be paid more. That's what we're seeing.
So that's and you don't know whether that's a reflection of the skill that goes into designing this. And I guess if you're a compensation consultant, you'll say there's a high level of skill. We work with a lot of clients. We need to understand a really broad range of factors of what motivates people and what else is being used in your industry.
Yeah. But what we did was we modeled what the fee should be. So looking at what the fee should be, we sort of created this model where we tried to estimate what the fee should have been and what the fee is. And that difference is what we consider this abnormal fee, where the compensation consultant is being paid more than what we expected them to be paid.
And we've seen this in audit, right? So we see the big 4 firms receive a fee premium where we model that the fee should be a certain level and we pay more
driven
for
by
big
firm
4
characteristics,
firms.
and
so we pay more for reputation. So is there a reputation effect with compensation firms?
That's a very interesting point. So what we also find is that even though on average it seems like compensation consultants are leading to higher levels of CEO pay, not all consultants are associated with this effect. In particular, when we looked at the big 4 accounting firms separately.
Also, big 4 accounting firms are compensation consultants as well.
They're also compensation consultants. They're not allowed to be auditors for the clients of the compensation.
Well, that would be a clear conflict of interest.
That would be a clear conflict of interest. But when they were compensation consultants, we didn't see this higher pay effect. So in other words,
so they're being reasonable.
They're being reasonable. So the big 4 accounting firms are being reasonable. And
that's a good sign.
Which is a good sign, right?
Considering all the people that have been dumping on the big 4 recently.
Exactly. And I think based on what we see in the auditing literature, when we compare these big 4 accounting firms with, say, smaller accounting firms, and in this case, smaller compensation consultants, there is this reputational effect that we're seeing. That is that if the bigger you are as a firm, the more reputation you have to uphold, right? Because as PwC, if PwC is a consultant, if they're associated with an excessively high level of CEO pay, that damages their reputation on the market, right? Whereas if you have a smaller consultant that doesn't really have a reputation.
Obviously there are some companies out there that just specialize in HR and HR consulting.
Yeah.
So there are some of those who are essentially charging more than what we think.
Yeah. So
what you've modeled is appropriate.
Yeah. So some would say there are effectively kind of 3 types of consultants. So we have the accounting firms, we have the specialists that just do remuneration consulting services, and then we have these multi-service sort of consultants.
HR and consultancy.
that sort of merge them in. And it seems like the ones that are specialists, they tend to be the ones that are more likely to recommend higher CEO pay. And we narrow down to this incentive effect, right? If all of your money is coming from advising CEOs on how much they should get paid, you probably want to keep the CEO happy of each of the firms that you have. Whereas if you're a big 4 accounting firm,
you should pay them less.
You're not going to pay.
That's going to go down very well.
Because because we see that with fees, and we see that with the consultant being retained. That is, if the consultant is used over multiple years, the CEO tends to be paid more as well. So
all of these things compounding, and I guess for everyday people, you and me, we're everyday worker bees. That's going to be important for us because part of our money every single month or every single paycheck goes into our superannuation. Yeah. And our superannuation is in some sort of managed fund that is investing in companies where potentially CEOs are receiving compensation based on talking with a consultant or based on that company working with a consultant. So I guess if you're in a fund, one of the things that you can do is to ask the fund manager, whether that's your super fund or whether you're directly invested into a fund, what their opinions are on this. Because certainly it's an interesting part of investing, and the financial industry has been rocked by the Banking Royal Commission. So that's sort of been forgotten since our latest election. We had the results just over the weekend.
Yep.
But you know, this idea of ethics and upholding ethics and integrity, you know, should that come into the discussion when it comes to companies and executives, especially when executives get paid so many times more than probably the average person that works at them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So now, Nelson, who else were the researchers on this paper? Because it wasn't just you working away.
No, it wasn't just me. It wasn't just me. No, I had a few colleagues in the trenches. So Matthew Gross, also from the University of Technology, Sydney.
He's currently, I think, on a sabbatical in the UK, living in the UK.
Yeah, he's on his 1 year leave sort of thing. And Tom Scott from the Auckland University of Technology.
Associate Professor Tom Scott?
Associate Professor.
Associate Professor Tom Scott at AUT?
Yes,
Auckland University of Technology,
yes.
Also formerly of the UTS Business School as one of our doctoral candidates.
Yep.
Well, I want to thank Nelson a lot. If you have any questions for Nelson about CEOs, CEO compensation, or any of his other research work, just pop them in the comments and I'll see if I can get him to jump onto YouTube and follow up.
Oh.
But this is a really interesting area, and for auditors, you know, we're always trying to find areas where there is high risk of material misstatement. And I think, you know, this could be one of those areas. If there's a potential for greater pay because they're using a consultant, then we have to look at executive compensation, which we always have, as an area of high risk, but with even greater scrutiny because there's more at stake. There's 12% more at stake, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars for that individual. And that's hundreds of thousands of dollars in just 1 year. So making sure that we audit the measures that they're using around those targets for us becomes really important.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks, Nelson. We are now going to enjoy some post-interview cupcakes. Special here. It's Nelson's birthday today and he doesn't want anyone to know.
Okay, well now everyone knows.
Now everyone knows.
Thank
By the
you.
time I get this edited up, no one will know what your actual birthday is.
Yeah.
He's keeping it quiet. But my kids made cupcakes. So we're going to enjoy these. But thanks very much for watching. If you thought the video was useful, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up. If you haven't already, click to subscribe for more like this. I'm going to hopefully talk to a lot more researchers this year about their research and its real world impact. And I'll chat to you next time. Bye.